I went to my colleagues in my laboratory and I asked them, listen, go to the literature, screen the literature and find which vaccine was never ever reported to associate with any autoimmune effect or autoinflammatory. And they came with one vaccine, and it's Pneumovax. And Pneumovax is the only vaccine which does not contain adjuvant. Isn't it interesting? We have vaccines. We have silicone, we have the Gulf War syndrome, we have the MMF, and most probably also chronic fatigue syndrome or the sick building syndrome. What they have in common is the adjuvant, the chronic stimulation of the immune system, which induces most probably cytokines which are responsible for the chronic fatigue, and they are also infiltrating into the brain to induce the damage in the brain. Because so there is some evidence which nobody can oppose it, even among those who do not believe that vaccine can cause autoimmune disease. And this is the report again in the unknown journal, New England Journal of Medicine, 1998, when the swine influenza vaccine was given, and there was a significant increase in Guillain-Barré syndrome. I would mention Guillain-Barré syndrome is a neurological condition of paralysis of the legs, or sometimes it goes to the upper part of the body. And there was no question about it. Actually, there was a second paper in New England Journal of Medicine about 10 or 15 years afterward, 10 years afterward, showing that when they changed something in the vaccine, there was less induction of Guillain-Barré syndrome, but still it was higher than in the regular population where you know the prevalence of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Also with the polio vaccine, we know that it induces transverse myelitis. There was no question about it. This was recognized also by the National Academies of the United States and by Institute of Medicine. It is well recognized and quite prevalent that subjects who receive the DTP and the rubella vaccine will develop arthritis. Actually, we know that sometimes patients with rubella, the native rubella, they develop arthritis. So it's not surprising that if you take this virus ingredient, you put it into adjuvant, you will enhance this reaction or maybe even increase the incidence of this arthritis. There are other associations, as you can see here, and there are some, first of all, in dogs, then in mice, in rats, and even in salmon who are grown in wild and farm as we will say salmon. So a veterinarian noted that dogs, after being vaccinated, they complained about different complaints, or maybe their owners complained about different complaints. And when he examined 20 dogs that he immunized with different vaccines, he found really a panoply of autoantibodies. One of them, for instance, antilaminin, which is a classical autoantibody in SLE. This is, by the way, my dog who was not vaccinated. So then he published another paper in the journal Lupus, and he was able to show that some of the salmons have changes in their bones, or joints, which resemble very much the panus-like changes that you can see in rheumatoid arthritis. Another model, a very nice model, is in alopecia areata. It's baldness, but you don't have hair anywhere in your body. And I have to say that the NIH gave a lot of money to study this peculiar autoimmune condition because it's very accessible for biopsies, because it's in the skin, so you can analyze it. And indeed, the autoantigen was found. There were many reports to show that the alopecia developed following hepatitis B vaccine. So somebody used a model, an animal model for alopecia, a natural, spontaneous model which developed the alopecia areata and vaccinated the rats. And as you can see, the rats who were vaccinated with hepatitis B developed the alopecia earlier than the placebo group. As I mentioned, and here I had a lot of criticism about what Dr. Pavelski said, in regular immune system we have the primary response, we have the secondary response, and this is the basis for the vaccine, that the secondary response is much more stronger and this protects you. And this is the idea behind the vaccine, vaccine. Nobody mentioned it here. And so what happened is that the secondary response is quicker, and usually it takes about the first response about 2 to 3 weeks. And this is the idea why the judges and the special master are looking for this period of 21 days to show the cause and effect relationship. There is another reason, because when you take the classical autoimmune disease rheumatic fever, and the rheumatic fever always appears 3 weeks after the streptococcal infection. So they want the 3 weeks of rheumatic fever because the molecular mimicry between the streptococcal envelope and the different organs involved in rheumatic fever are exactly 3 weeks. But we know that, as I mentioned before, and this is again a paper in the unknown journal, New England Journal of Medicine, showing that autoantibodies may proceed by years. There is some kind of a long incubation time, as well as there are other studies which I show here. For instance, when you follow patients who were vaccinated for flu and you measure autoantibodies, some of them appear only after 6 months. So there is some kind of an incubation period of the vaccine in which they induce the autoantibody. These are studies that when hepatitis B vaccine were shown to associate with multiple sclerosis, they were criticized very much. But if you follow these patients after 3 years, a paper that was published in Neurology, you can see that after 3 years there was a close association between those who developed the hepatitis, developed multiple sclerosis, and those who received the hepatitis B virus. The same story appeared also with the papilloma virus vaccine. We have talked about it too much today, and you can see in the paper recently in JAMA in 2009 they showed that only after 2.5 years of follow-up the patient developed, and I want to draw your attention to Guillain-Barré syndrome, transfer myelitis. So you can see that most of the manifestation were neural manifestation. So I will skip this and I will skip this, and let's go to the possible mechanism. What are the mechanisms by which vaccine can induce autoimmunity? There are different aspects of the vaccine, and somebody already talked about it. We have the antigens of the bacteria, of the viruses, mimicking the regular virus, and by that also mimicking some of the ingredients of our body constituents, but there are also the preservatives, and we have also the adjuvant. And as I mentioned, there are many mechanisms by which adjuvant increase the immune reactivity. Because he showed very clearly that the macrophage myofasciitis is associated with the adjuvant, and specifically the alum, and these are some pictures which I've taken from his book, but I would like you to draw against your attention to the clinical manifestation. Myalgias, chronic weakness, severe weakness, and sometimes also neurological manifestation. If I remember well, in your first paper, you published that 1/3 of the patients developed eventually multiple sclerosis. And the time period, again, was not 21 days or 2 months or 3 months. It came up to 8 years. So it shows that there is a long incubation time. This is the paper that I discussed with you about the appearance of macrophage myofasciitis in children. It came out from Israel.